Lakeland Currents, your public affairs program for North Central Minnesota. Production funding for Lakeland Currents is made possible by Bemidji Regional Airport, serving the region with daily flights to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. More information available at bemidjiairport.org. Closed captioning for Lakeland Currents is sponsored by Nisswa Tax Service, tax preparation for businesses and individuals. Online at nisswatax.com.
Hello again, friends. I'm Jason Edens, your host of Lakeland Currents. Thanks for joining the conversation, and thanks for your ongoing support of Lakeland Public TV. As we wrap up the season here at Lakeland Currents, let's visit about one of my favorite topics, craft beer. Minnesota is home to nearly 200 craft breweries or microbreweries, and we are very fortunate here in our viewing region to have several outstanding and innovative breweries. The research for today's conversation was arduous, as I had to sample the amazing product of my two guests today. Megan Hill is the principal at Bemidji Brewing, and Jeff Vondenkamp is the co-owner and head brewer at Portage Brewing in Walker, Minnesota. Jeff and Megan, it's nice to meet you too, and thank you so much for making time for our conversation today.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
Thanks.
So first of all, the hospitality sector has been hit really hard by COVID, and so I'd just like to check in with the two of you. How are your businesses doing? How have you weathered the storm over the past year?
It has definitely been a year to stretch new muscles and work on being really nimble. I can't tell you how many times I've said we've pivoted in this last year, countless. So it was crazy for a while, but I think we're back on our feet, and we're really looking forward to moving forward into 2021 and getting back to what our new normal is going to be and what we can expect for consistency. So we're really looking forward to having 2020 behind us.
Nice. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, same boat. I mean, unlike Bemidji, when we were going into the pandemic, we weren't doing any distribution at all. So we were just relying on, cans out of the tap room and draft. And we literally had to flip our business completely the other direction, which isn't easy to do because beer is, it's very inefficient to move. And so, delivery vans, drivers, canning lines, boxes, just all of the necessary requirements to get beer out the door, while losing a lot of your margin because your costs skyrocket. It was a big challenge for us, but kind of like what Megan said, and I think, every challenge, there's a new opportunity. So, we're now able to expand because, come Memorial Day, all of this beer we've been distributing has to stay in-house. So if we want to, walk away from a substantial amount of our retail partners, we basically have to expand or we have to stop. So it's giving us a chance to grow a little bit more. Yeah, it was definitely like Megan said, stretching new muscles. It's well, we learned a lot, and we're excited about, also very excited about the year. I think Northern Minnesota is going to be insane this year. Biggest population growth, traffic we're going to probably ever see. So it'll be fun to get back to that.
Well, Jeff, I want to stick with you. What's your origin story in terms of Portage Brewing? How and when did you start it, and why?
We've been coming up to this area for about 25 years. Just, as you know, Leech Lake, it's a big tourist town. There's also a brewery in Walker before we had decided to launch. But no, I was actually, I'd been homebrewing for probably 8 years before we started the brewery. And I was actually on that trip you were talking about I was actually in Nepal, and my dad called me over Wi-Fi and was like, I met this guy in town. We both want to start a business here. Would you ever consider starting a brewery? And I had to chew on it for a while because I was just coming off of San Francisco tech, travel, didn't really know if I'd fit really well living up here, but yeah, I decided to give it a shot. And, we've had a lot of hurdles, but the work's really engaging. It's not, there's always something to do and something fun to kind of work on. So, we just decided to kick off in 2017, and, it's kind of been a roller coaster ever since we opened. So
I bet it has. Megan, what's the origin story of Bemidji Brewing, and how did you get into the brewing industry?
Yeah, so there's along with myself and my husband who own the brewery, our business partners, Bud and Tina Caney. own it along with us. So Bud and Tom met in college, went their separate ways for a while after graduating, and Bud has this true entrepreneurial spirit, which is really incredible. And he called Tom up, who became a pretty avid home brewer in college, and said, "Hey, I think we should start something." That was around the time when the laws in Minnesota were changing. So the Surly Bill was in the process of being passed, making the barrier to entry a lot lower. So just kind of things aligned, and we started a Kickstarter that raised a good chunk of money for startup in, oh my goodness, 2012, I think. It's years. We're going to be 10 next year, which is crazy. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. But it gets a little fuzzy. So we did that, and proved there was a market, moved our equipment in and out of the community kitchen space at Harmony Co-op in town, and then got secured a lease when the bank, we proved to the bank that there was a market for craft beer in Bemidji, and we've been able to grow since then. So that first place opened in 2013, and then we expanded to our current location in 2016. So
I didn't realize that Bemidji Brewing started at Harmony Co-op initially.
yeah,
Is that what I heard
yeah,
you say? Really?
yeah, it's incredible. Like there's just like some great synergy that was happening around the time we were planning. So Harmony had just expanded into their large location and had built this community kitchen space off the back. And so it was just great. They worked really closely with us because the TTB hadn't really seen a brewery that was looking to operate within a like a shared space before. So there was a lot of learning there, but they're awesome partners to help us get off the ground. So it was really cool.
So let's talk about a beer bubble. So right now there are nearly 200 breweries in Minnesota. Prior to Prohibition, though, it's my understanding that there were almost 300. Are we in a beer bubble, or can Minnesota sustain this many breweries and more?
For my whole philosophy since we started was to stay really small. I don't think there's a bubble if the breweries are staying kind of within their means and not, getting to these big, statewide or regional distribution networks. I never wanted to do that. I wanted to run this brewery like a home brewery and keep it small batch, experimental. So I think for us, whatever we decide to do, I think we're going to be capped out at this location. But I think inevitably, that's the mission for us, is just to stay small. And I think there's room for a lot more breweries if, they're community oriented, they're not exceeding, 1,000 barrels. They're just staying nice and small. But yeah, I think shelf space, again, the production side or wholesale side for us it's arduous. It's a headache at every turn. There's shelf space is very limited. We're still in the 750 milliliter crowler size too. We don't actually have 16 or 12 ounce cans. So that's even harder to battle. So there's a lot of state rules that are keeping us from distributing. And I think also just from a saturation perspective, we are exceeding that kind of brewery per capita mark that I'm comfortable with. But that's our experience anyway.
What do you think, Megan? Is the market saturated?
Yeah, it's a good question. I really echo a lot of what Jeff said. When we got into the industry, it was pretty early on, and there were only we were planning, there were 20 breweries in the state. So it was really small, and everyone's goal at that time was to open and become a regional brewery, so you're distributing across the entire state and probably some of your neighboring states too. And that was our original goal, but we quickly figured out, that what our limits were and what we thought was going to be sustainable. And that's been our goal ever since, is to find where's that happy medium. We're not going to be a giant state distributing company, but how much can we push out of an area where we're the most potent? And so with that, I think that there are lots of places in small towns where breweries could still open, and they can be that community gathering spot, right? We're really cool. We're like cafes, right? But with beer. But but I don't know that there's the what felt like at different times unlimited potential for breweries to open and get really big, and for there to be a lot of them. I think that ship has sailed, and it'll be the exception rather than the rule of what it kind of was in the early 2010s.
Yeah.
Sure.
We're finding
I
too
gotcha.
a lot of niche, there's a lot of niche markets still that are actually international or national that I mean, a lot of our mixed fermentation, our sour program, it doesn't sell well at all in Minnesota, but we're talking to people all over the US and even internationally who want to buy that beer. So it's more just like, if you can find, instead of saying like, we're just going to be a brewery and we're going to make everything, like finding an interest that's like, that lines up with your core values and you just follow that. Like anybody can open a brewery if that's the mission.
Well, I
Yeah.
definitely want to ask you about your sours because both of you brew sour ales, so I'm eager to talk about that. But before we go there, it's great to have local breweries, of course, throughout our state, our region, and across the nation. But how local are your ingredients? Do you source your hops and grain locally?
We do work with you know, ingredient brokers, and Jeff is going to have the right language around this, so forgive me. But like there are larger companies that that purchase and sell ingredients, and we work with them primarily, and which is cool because a lot of them are kind of centrally located in Minnesota. But we do work locally with a maltster out of the Crookston area called Vertical Malt. So they grow, or their family, they've been farming for a long time, and as they look to diversify, this is one way that they're doing it. Is they see the craft beer, craft breweries are growing, and so they have been able to kind of alter their business to meet that demand for local products. So we have beers that primarily feature them, and that's, I think, the biggest way that we've been able to do to feature local products. But I think Jeff really has worked diligently on featuring local things in his products.
Yeah, I mean, we try. Obviously we're looking for the best quality. So there's things in Minnesota like two row. Our base barley, I would imagine most of what Bemidji's using too. That's grown at the largest maltster in the world currently at Roar. That's the best malt you're gonna find in the world, and it's grown right here in Minnesota, and it's also kilned and shipped from there. But hops, there are ingredients that we rely heavily on, like hops, and unfortunately, that's very region specific. Certain latitude, certain climate. We've even now started to like select. Hops are they're kind of a mess in our industry. There's a lot of there's a lot of variability between each variety. So everyone knows Citra. If you buy Citra 20 times in a year, you're going to be probably getting 20 different lots, and the quality of the hop from those different lots is going to vary. I don't want to afford to have to do that like we used to do. So instead, we select one lot for our entire brewery for the year, and we contract the hops. So it's consistent every time, and you're not relying on what if this is good and what if it's not. But then back to Minnesota, I mean, we've started, tons of organic fruits. I've been talking to someone out of Duluth who has this tea company who's using like foraged pine needles. And I mean, there's a tremendous amount of materials we can use in beer outside of, malt and hops. And I think that's what we're trying to showcase in some of our smaller, mixed fermentation beers, is just what can we get our hands on? Where are these farmers? How far do we have to drive to get a couple 100 pounds of fruit? That's been our focus, at least for Minnesota focused ingredients.
So Jeff, you mentioned policy, and I definitely wanted to visit about that. Actually, both of you have mentioned policy. First of all, Megan, I was wondering if you can just tell us briefly what the Surly Bill is and how it catalyzed the craft brewing industry in Minnesota. And then Jeff, I'd be interested in hearing from you. What do you think the industry needs? You mentioned that there's policy that's basically limiting your growth. So Megan, please.
Yeah, so the Surly Bill was passed, and it, like I said before, it lowered the barrier to entry. So what it really did was mean that we can sell, it used to be illegal to sell our own product over our own counter to customers. So before, you had to invest in really large equipment that's really expensive and then sell it to a distributor at a lower margin and make it work that way. But by being able to sell pints across the bar to your own customers, you're able to recoup more of that cost, and it just makes it feasible. You can start a little brewery like we started as, and like Jeff has started as, and then grow from there. And so it just made it easier so that we could go from 10, 20 breweries to 200 where we're at now.
So what does the industry need in order to grow from a policy perspective? I understand that there's a cap on growler sales based on total volume. What do we need, Jeff?
Well, again, the growler cap legislation really only affects a few breweries in the state. 20,000 barrels is they keep increasing the cap, but I think it's more, there's a lot of structural things that have been in place since Prohibition. Our 3-tier system, which is, producer, distributor, retailer, there's still a lot of laws that basically prevent us from really emerging as a producer and a retailer. You really have to work through the distribution channel to succeed in the state. And I think that's a tough thing. Specifically, we're unable to sell any container size outside of our tap rooms beyond a 750 milliliter container or a 64-ounce container. You go over to Wisconsin, you can buy kegs out of a tap room. I mean, any container size from 12 ounces up to a 5-gallon keg, a brewery can sell you directly. So it helps you, again, if creatively, if you want to try to maintain a really small operation, that would enable us to do the things we really want to do. Instead, we're limited to this 750 milliliter crowler can, which they're hard to fill. There's not canning lines for them. We've been lucky to figure out how to can them in a safe, high quality way. And there's can shortages. There's as far as I know, I think we're the only state who actually requires the only container size that's basically that small is a 750 milliliter can. So there's shortages because the canning manufacturers are saying there's such low demand for this. The only state is Minnesota. We're afraid in the very near future they're going to just stop producing that can size, and we're not going to have anything we can sell outside of our tap rooms besides growlers. That's the big one. The other one is we're not able to have multiple tasting rooms or locations. You can have one production brewery, you can have multiple production breweries, but you can only have one tap room. And again, our model is to stay small and stay, small as we possibly can and try to open these, other locations in small communities. We're not able to do that in Minnesota. We basically have to be a production brewery to continue to grow. And that obviously is not the route we want to go. So
I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. So what are the prospects for these changes taking place? Would it be something that would happen during this legislative session? And are all y'all collaborating on these policy needs?
There's not a lot of representatives that are willing to hear it out. And I think it hits the floor every once in a while, but I think that the general consensus in our industry is none of this stuff is going to change because of, there's a lot of old school ways of doing things in the state, and we're not able to kind of turn the tide in the direction that the entire country's going. We're still stuck so far in the past. And so, yeah, I don't think there's a lot of hope. I mean, the Minnesota Craft Brewers Guild, the Free the Beer, that group, we're trying to get legislation through, but it just keeps getting stopped. And a lot of the effort is still on that growler, increasing the growler container size, which is just like, we do, 1,000 to 2,000 barrels a year. Like that doesn't even come near affecting us at home, so.
Right. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about collaboration. I'm curious if you would describe the craft brewing industry in Minnesota as collaborative. Jeff, I know that you're doing a collaboration with Modest Brewing, and I'm just curious, is that something that a lot of craft breweries do? Do you reach out to one another and make a product together? Is that something the two of you would consider doing, for example?
That's what is really cool about the craft brewing industry. I think I'm not the first one to call it kind of like cooperation, if you will, where we often call upon each other like, oh, do you have these hops that we can't get in until so and so such a time? And that's why we're so excited when Jeff opened in Walker, because for a long time we were like out on an island out here in northern Minnesota by ourselves, where when you're in the cities you can throw a rock and you hit up 10 breweries or so.
Right.
So it's cool at different times, we can lean on each other for that sort of stuff. And we internally haven't done any collaborations with other breweries, but it's always something that our production team really wants to do, and it just hasn't worked out yet. But hopefully in the future that's something that we can do, and definitely Portage is at the top of our list.
Speaking of, I needed a couple barrel racks for our brewery. We just picked them up yesterday and dropped off some crowlers, grabbed some cans, put some cash in a little corner of a mailbox. So yeah, it's very collaborative. I've had issues with hops or grains, and I know Tom has too. And So yeah, there really is that. And again, I think it goes back to our industry, right? You can't ship it everywhere. It's like, it's inefficient, it's heavy. It has to stay kind of close to home. So it's not like a coffee company where coffee companies they hold things close to the chest. Like their processes are usually proprietary. There's not a lot of that collaboration in other industries. And I think just the nature of our product it just drops all of those barriers. But I personally have learned more commercially in my experience collaborating than I have any self-taught information I've ever found. I mean, I was just out in Bailey's Harbor this last weekend brewing with a brewery out there, and just these small things you learn in their process that are like, oh, like let's take that back to the brewery and implement it. So it's good fun. It's creative. It helps from like a marketing perspective. We don't spend any money on advertising. So if we can find a like-minded brewery to just like tag team on a product, it gets our brands out in a very product focused way. So that's any day of the week. That's going to be our focus, is just to keep working with great breweries and helping each other kind of grow.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's actually on tap this summer. You've both mentioned sour ales. And for those folks who aren't familiar with sour ales, I was wondering if you can just kind of give us a meta level summary of what a sour ale is, first of all. And then I'm eager to hear from both of you about what sour ales you're brewing. So Megan, what exactly is a sour ale for those who aren't familiar?
Oh my goodness, Jason, I'm going to kick this to Jeff so he's going to give us a much better, more comprehensive idea than I can.
Well, I sometimes get too far in the weeds and then fans and no. Yeah, I mean, sour. Oh man, I could talk about a whole hour about sour beer. It's like a very complex issue. Especially
we have 5 minutes.
Yeah. So the way we brew specifically is through spontaneous and mixed fermentation, saison brewing. So we don't actually call our beer sour beer. It is sour, but we follow a more traditional Brussels lambic style process. So we're basically cultivating wild yeast around our local area, bringing it into the brewery, and then using that to ferment our beers. So yeah, we're trying to work as close to the land as we can on that. Local Minnesota organic, all organic barley hops, any ingredients we use. So that's the way we brew it. I know, and Bemidji does too. They brew mixed fermentation beers. Predominantly, a lot of sours you're going to see in the state are kettle sours, and we've never brewed one. I don't have any interest in brewing one. I like to look for like a really nuanced sour beer. And I think with using the microbes that we can get our hands on, you get a lot more complexity. It sits in barrels for a year or more, so it just makes a really complex lambic style beer. So that's kind of our focus. And again, we're every year we're trying to cultivate relationships with fruit growers, tea farmers. I mean, the ingredients list is like far and wide for the stuff we want to keep doing. So yeah, I love Bemidji's Creek. That's one of my favorite sour beers. It's always on too. So it doesn't move super fast.
Yeah.
Which is nice because people who are really into good mixed fermentation sour beer, it's becoming easier to find really good sour beer.
Yeah, I'm really excited that we have it in northern Minnesota, and you two are definitely pioneering that. So Megan, can you tell us a little bit briefly about the creek that you have on tap, as well as anything else that's on tap this summer?
Yeah, so
so
our sour program is a little bit different than Jeff's in terms of we're inoculating our barrels from the other beer in it. So we're not spontaneously fermenting that. We're capturing a yeast strain that has characteristics that our production team really favors and trying to accentuate those as we make that beer. So it is only available in our tap room. It's like a fun little tap room Easter egg that when people make the trip to come see us, they get to enjoy. And like Jeff said, it just is a nice, a much more complex profile than what our team kind of thinks you can get out of a kettle sour. So our creek is on, and as Jeff mentioned, we're looking for those kinds of ingredients. We've been able to utilize local fruit farmers. So we've gotten a lot of fruit from Bagley that's gone into our sour program, including the cherries. The creek means cherry. And so those have come just down the road in Bagley. So that is on. That program is kind of reduced a little bit, but that beer will be on, and our classic Flanders, so unflavored or unfruited, will also be available. But then otherwise, we have seasonal IPA. So our summer IPA just recently came out. Our team is working to kind of have one lager available throughout the year. So right now, the lager that we have is our New Zealand Pilsner, which if you talk to any brewer, I don't know about your team, Jeff, but our team, they want to drink are Pilsners because it's a good standard to see what a brewery can do. So they're excited to do that and to work with some New Zealand hops there. And then we have a fan favorite Blood Orange IPA that'll come out around Memorial Day. And then very exciting, we'll be putting our German Blonde is our most popular beer. It makes up the largest portion of our portfolio, and we'll be putting that in 12 packs coming out in June. So we're excited to bring that to market.
We're releasing a ton of little 5-gallon mixed fermentation fruit projects. We're kind of just gonna, when they're ready, we're gonna drop them, and there's gonna be a few gallons available, sort of thing. So again, get those eggs. We want people to come up and come and see us. But we're really excited about some of our sour beers. And again, we also have a pretty traditional Pilsner program that we're still continuing to improve on. So lots of, crushable and complex is what I like to strive for in the summer. Lower ABV, not a lot of high alcohol stuff, high flavor stuff, just really drinkable beer. So.
Yep, I noticed your mild ale on your menu earlier. So I'm curious, how do your two breweries give back to your communities? Megan?
Yeah, so we've had to change it up a little bit with the pandemic. So we used to do a pint night. Community pint night is what it used to be called, and $1 from every beverage sold. So no matter the size, no matter if it's beer or NA Bev, goes to a local partner nonprofit. We adjusted that to start this year. We evolved it to the community growler give back. And so instead of pints, because we didn't have people enjoying beer on site here, we adjusted that to be growlers that went out the door. So we were able to work with the groups that we're supposed to partner with last year to execute that the beginning of this year. And then as we go forward into the year, we'll determine if we'll keep it that or update it and go on. But the community gives so much to us, and it's we just enjoy being able to partner and give back to the community we're in.
Last question for each one of you. Where can we find your brewery? And when you're not drinking your own product, what's a brewery that inspires you?
We have a beer locator on our website, portersbeer.com/ourbeer. That's the best place statewide. Obviously, our tap room here in Walker. And we're at about, I don't know, we maybe have 50 or 60 retail partners across the state: Duluth, Moorhead, Twin City Metro, St. Cloud area. Favorite breweries. Wow. It really depends on the style and the type of year, honestly. I drink a lot of Bemidji IPA, locally, especially because they distribute here. But Fair State's also probably my top #1 favorite brewery in the state, just from a culinary quality perspective. They're pushing the dial at all times, and I always look up to those guys. So
you can find us in the Bemidji area, of course, so in the headwaters region up here, so Bemidji, Walker, Park Rapids, and then down to the Brainerd Lakes area. You can find us across there, and then also west down Highway 2 to Grand Forks, and down through Detroit Lakes and into the Fargo-Moorhead area. And then, of course, our tap room is right downtown in Bemidji. I would say, Portage is an awesome complement to us at Bemidji Brewing. They are just so creative and make really incredible esoteric beers that we always enjoy and get inspired by. And then, not to reiterate this, but our production team also really admires Fair State too, and what they do out of their place. So.
Well, I want to thank you both for spending time with us this afternoon, and thank you for bringing your craft here to northern Minnesota.
Thanks.
And I want to thank all of you for joining me once again. I'm Jason Edens, your host of Lakeland Currents. Be kind and be well. We'll see you next week.